Welcome back, everyone, to the next episode of Data Analytics Chat, where we discuss the latest challenges and trends that are happening in the AI and data space. Today, we've got an important topic where we're looking at how AI and ML is changing the workforce. Obviously, it's an important topic. A lot of changes are happening. Obviously, I guess a lot of fear from the papers, media towards teams. So it's going to be an interesting discussion today. So I'm delighted to welcome Barbara Widholm, who is the VP of Bionics at State Street, who is a leading financial services company. And welcome, Barbara.
Hi, thank you. As you mentioned, as the Vice President of Bionics, that includes AI and machine learning. I have the privilege of working with teams at the forefront of integrating artificial intelligence and automation into financial services. I'm very passionate about exploring how emerging technologies can shape the future of finance and also create new opportunities within our industry. A bit more about my background. So I have been with State Street for I think like over 9 years now. Before that, I was working in investment banking. I have a master's in data science, which comes in handy now that everything is about like data. And some of my other previous roles include also like digital transformation and digital assets. I was part of the team that was looking at our tokenization strategy at State Street.
Brilliant. Excellent. And so I guess data's getting more domain focused. Did you have to get into the data world? Was financial services like an interest to yourself, or did you fall into it like many others?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I think I fell into it like so many others, but my background is actually, so I have a bachelor degree in psychology and counseling, completely different. But then when I was working at State Street, I really became interested in data, particularly working with our trading team, our strats team, so working on trading strategies. And I saw the power of data, and it was like back then. So I think like State Street already was using AI machine learning for over, I would say 10 to 12 years now, predominantly on the trading side. But that was always of interest to me. It's understanding the data, what insights you can gain in it, and how you can predict future outcomes with it.
Interesting. I always find it interesting to see how people end up in their careers because I guess now it's busy. Before, I think there's so many different options now to get into this industry now.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting is a lot of these jobs. So, for example, when I look at my career, digital, for example, and even that role, they didn't really exist like five years ago, right? So I know that my next role probably will be in a role, an area that doesn't exist yet today, that will be defined or formed based on technology changes and things around that.
Yeah, nice. It's moving fast, so yeah. Brilliant. All right, let's dive into the first question then. AI and ML has changed the dynamics in the workforce in recent years. From your opinion, which roles have been most impacted by AI adoption?
Sure. So I would say AI significantly impacted roles that involve repetitive, data intensive tasks such as data entry, customer service, financial analysis, operations. So, give you an example, customer service roles that are enhanced now with AI chatbots, with virtual assistants. So, before you get passed on to a human, there will be a vetting process by those, which enables like quicker response times and also 24/7 support. We talked about data analysts. They are leveraging AI tools now for predictive analytics, allowing them to shift more from, I would say, manual reporting to providing more strategic insights into the data. And then I can also see it from a compliance and risk management perspective, using AI for monitoring, for fraud detection, streamlining audits, improving accuracy and efficiency. In particular for financial services, there's AI. There are roles, I would say, like anything to do with repetitive data intensive tasks have been significantly transformed by AI adoption. For instance, we have teams that handle asset custody, accounting functions, and they can integrate AI now to automate transaction processing and reconciliation. So, for example, you can predict whether a trade will fail, for example. You can enhance efficiency and accuracy. Additionally, roles in compliance and risk management have been augmented with AI-driven monitoring and fraud detection systems, allowing for more proactive risk mitigations.
Yeah. No, there's been massive changes, hasn't it, across the field, obviously in recent years, especially with obviously the Gen AI boom. Obviously, there's a lot more that can be done now, isn't it, within the field? And obviously,
Yeah. So
it's going to
because
take up
more
tasks.
Yeah, and it's also because we have like more data available now. So I think having more data, and we, for example, as a custodian bank, we have a lot of data, right? So the insights that you can get from the data now is huge.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely a lot more data about. So do you, I mean, there's obviously, especially with the Gen AI boom, I guess, there are a lot of fear it's going to take our jobs, all them sort of stories. What's your thoughts? Do you think AI and ML are replacing or augmenting roles?
Yeah, so in my opinion, I would say definitely AI is there to predominantly augment roles rather than replacing them. I don't think that everything can be done in the future by generative AI or by automation, because I feel in particular for institutions that are heavily regulated, you need to have a human in the loop. You need to make sure that what, for example, the solution or that you get back is actually accurate, at least at the beginning. But I would say that by automating the tasks, AI allows employees like to focus on more strategic, creative, and creative and problem solving aspects of their job. So,
Mhm.
for example, critical thinking, all this emotional intelligence, creating relationships with people. I don't think that will be like replaced in the future. But I would definitely say that, for example, AI tools in finance, automating transactions reconciliation that will enable employees to spend more time, for example, on forecasting and on strategy rather than looking through the data and making sure that the data is accurate. In customer support, AI can handle, for example, initially questions like while human agents can then, for example, manage more complex queries requiring empathy and critical thinking. With that, I don't think will ever be replaced or in the foreseeable future not be replaced by generative AI. On our company website, for example, we state that AI primarily serves to augment roles rather than replacing them. So we definitely also want to highlight automating routine tasks like AI enables our employees to concentrate on strategic initiatives and complex solving solutions, right? So I would say it's definitely there to augment, but it's also important to know how to use these tools like effectively. I think that's becomes very important.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like we said, I think obviously, I think roles are now getting more strategic. Like you said, there's more data, isn't there? So you need to. There's no point getting all this data if you're not going to be able to think and actually do something worthwhile with it, is there? So yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely think it's more of a strategic element of data roles now. With this, your experience, so especially 9 years at State Street, have you seen like resistance to change within AI and ML in the workforce? Because obviously it's new, isn't it? And you get different types of people. And I guess how can you obviously if so, how can you address it with individuals?
So that's interesting. Again, this is also a topic like when I, for example, attend conferences or talk about generative AI. That's something that I come across very often, and that's something that we hear very
Mm,
often. And I think it's common due to, I would say, fears of job displacement, and then also maybe some misconception, right? That's why I think it's really important to address these concerns. So first of all, what we did, not with generative AI, but it was like on other topics, but it's always really important to have like maybe a demystification session, whether that's firm, whether that's in smaller group, but like really really have an honest discussion about what, for example, this technology is and what it is not. So I think that really helps at the beginning, having transparent communication or explaining how generative AI, for example, will support them as employees in the day-to-day job rather than replacing their roles. Also, really important is talking about upskilling and reskilling. So, for example, as I've mentioned, my background is in psychology and counseling. I got very interested in data. So I did another master's in data science. And then I did some various courses, like, for example, MIT offered a really interesting course on generative AI and application in financial services. The reason why I'm mentioning it, it's like a lifelong learning process. You never stop learning, right? And it's like really important that as anybody like keep on that, right? But then from if you work within an organization, what the organization can do is offering training to equip like our employees with skills to work alongside generative AI. For example, one thing that really resonated really was that we've done it twice now. We run a hackathon for people, specifically target for people that are non-coders and non-developers to get familiar with the new technology. So last year we had a hackathon where we partnered up with another fintech partner that included also to learn about generative AI. How can you use generative AI? And then the people that we invited to participate in the hackathon were more on the business side. So they understood what the issues and challenges are from a business perspective. That's what we really need, that knowledge. And then basically train them to use some of these new tools and technologies that they can then help and build a solution themselves to automate some of these processes. So I think that really resonated really well. Another thing, like I think it's really important, is to bring people along the journey with you earlier on. So, for example, when you work on these strategic initiatives where you want to bring in, for example, generative AI or any new technology for that matter, is to bring in the people along with you, meaning asking them for their opinion, training them on like technology, getting them included in, let's say, if we're looking to change a process or automate a process, having them working alongside with you, that goes a long way. So inclusion in decision making is super important. So that also helps to reduce the fear of the unknown, foster a sense also of ownership to them as well. So I would say these are some of the things like that I would definitely implement, and that should help with some of the resistance and some of the fear that comes with any new technology.
I love that hackathon, because it's
Mm.
obviously you always have the divide on
Yeah.
your business and like data tech teams. Well, I guess you could do it either way, couldn't you?
Yeah.
Because obviously you get techies that are really into their tech and obviously need to understand the domain knowledge. And then obviously on the business side, if you
Yeah.
understand the other problems, obviously you can work vice versa, kind of. And I guess, I think that's the biggest challenges problem businesses have, is embedding that knowledge, because there's always that. It always seems like whenever I speak to people, there's that gap in the middle. Like you need the middle person
Yeah.
just to be able to share the knowledge. But then if you can also
Correct. And I
embed
think
that together.
Yeah, and I think based on my previous roles, I think that's some of the, I would say, like some of the role that I took because I came from the business side, but now I moved into technology. So really understanding both sides, but being able to bring them together. So translating what like tech wants to build, but then also translate it like from a business perspective that they understand what are they building and why, and then making sure like we all work together. Mhm.
Yeah. I always say it's the glue in the middle that obviously needs to keep
Yeah,
both sides together.
correct.
The challenge, that's one of the biggest challenges. I've from speaking to people, I think that's the biggest challenge that companies face, the communication aspect in the middle.
Yeah.
So with obviously the changes, what skills do employees need to succeed in a AI and ML work environment nowadays?
So I would say definitely having some level of technical proficiency around generative AI. So definitely important is to have a fundamental understanding of generative AI, what it is, what are some of the tools that are available, also what are some of the risks, ethical concerns. So I would say definitely an understanding around that. Also, I think what's really important is adaptability. So the willingness to embrace change and learn new technologies, because to that point, sometimes people are resistant because they're resistant to change, right? So how can you change that mindset?
Mhm.
Critical thinking, so the ability, I would say, to interpret it, generative AI generated insights and make informed decisions. So that's definitely something I think that's going to become super important in the future. So looking at the data set, try to interpret it, or like when you get, for example, responses back from generative AI, for example, from chatbots, making sure that you understand how the generative AI or how the chatbot derives to this answer is super, super important. Somebody else told me like, so no, so not somebody else. So I did attend a German American conference at the Harvard Business School. So it was organized by students, but they had like speakers from Germany that worked in the government in different areas. And one person mentioned, I thought it was very interesting. He made the statement saying that in the future, he predicts that data scientists like will become, not saying obsolete, but might be replaced with people that are more in tune with, for example, prompting, right? Prompting the technology, how to know what questions to ask to get to the information that you need, for example. I thought that was very interesting. And then lastly, I would say collaboration. Effective communication is super important. Team working skills to work alongside generative AI systems and also cross-functional teams.
Yeah. No, definitely. I honestly think it's going to definitely evolve, isn't it? It's going to be
Mhm.
interesting times ahead, and like I think if you're not involved, you need to get involved or need to start learning to, because, like I said, roles are evolving and changes will happen
Yeah.
more and more as we get on. So, there are common challenges organizations face when trying to integrate AI into their workforce strategies.
I would say so challenges you mean at organization phase?
Yeah, so has any been like any typical like challenges you've heard, seen that
Okay.
organisations face when they're implementing AI across the business?
Yes, I think it's more having the right guardrails in place. So, as I've mentioned before, when you're heavily regulated, you are responsible to answer to regulators. And you obviously want to have an understanding of how, for example, you will use generative AI. So, I think for any organization, having a good governance framework in place, having policies and standards in place that really defines of how we will use this technology, making sure that people are trained, receive the right training, as I've mentioned before. I think
Mm.
that is super, super important. And then another, not necessarily a challenge, but also understand this is with integration with every new technology is when you have, for example, legacy technology with new technology, how do you make it work? So understanding the current processes, current systems that you may have and how, for example, you can change it to bring in new technology. I think that's also something that can be challenging and tricky sometimes.
Yeah. And then I guess, how should companies approach upskilling and reskilling their workforce then? Because it's a massive change, isn't it now? Implementing AI
Yeah.
or becoming more data driven, should we say, and into a business. It's like if you're used to one way of working, it's flipping over and starting again thing, isn't it? Embedding it all together. So I guess what approaches have you
Yeah.
seen or heard have been beneficial or and helpful?
Yeah, so that's something that I'm actually currently looking into to see, first of all, and it's been a really interesting exercise to see what information is out there. So you have your like learning platforms like Coursera, Udemy, and things like that, just to see like what training is out there, what training is relevant, what trainings you have available within your organization, and then making sure you also tailor this training depending on who you're going to be delivering the training to. So, for example, you probably might make changes if you want to train people that are in a business or training people that are working with technology or your senior executive levels. So I would say definitely training is hugely important. And then also thinking about skilling initiatives. So, for example, encouraging people to acquire generative AI related skills through structured learning paths. And that can be done in different ways. So, for example, as I've mentioned, the hackathon idea that we had, or having not office hours, but having maybe like workshops where you introduce a new technology and where you invite people to come along and try out this technology and giving them a safe environment where they can learn about it. I would also say diverse hiring practices really important. So recruiting individuals with transferable skills and providing specialized Gen AI training post hiring. So it's a continuous learning. And another thing that might be resonating really well is like having mentorship opportunities. So, for example, I am the co-chair of the Professional Women's Network on the technology side. And what we would like to roll out is a mentorship program where we want to partner somebody from the technology with the business side. So that basically is a win for me because you can partner up somebody who's got the technical expertise with somebody who has the business expertise and they can learn from each other. It's a knowledge transfer and practical learning.
Yeah. Now, I've heard of other companies looking at buddy schemes, and also like for a business student, not on the tech side, but more like diverse profiles coming into businesses so you can get embedded in the company easier and things like that. I think it does all help, doesn't it, when you speak to people? And I think that the more you speak to people, the more you're going to learn, isn't it, really? From different areas of the
Oh yeah.
business, it's going to help you learn, and it's going to obviously, hopefully, appeal to people 'cause it's going to benefit their careers.
Yeah, yeah. Another thing, just to add on that, oh, sorry, I forgot to mention that. But for example, if you have, and I'm sure big organizations have a lot of partnership with either other organization or fintechs providers. So what we did, for example, was like to invite these partners and have a lunch and learning session. So for example, we learned about cybersecurity, we learned about quantum computing. So on a regular basis, bringing people together or invite speakers to come into your office and talk about a new topic. So that really resonated really well. And we are continuing, or we're looking to continue offering that or do that next year as well. So we're already starting thinking about what topics would be of interest and what we should be learning more about.
Mm. I think with trading, I think it's because I've done trade like sales lot for my business sales, and if you do it once, you need to keep doing it, don't you? Like over and over again. It's a constant learning thing, so you can't just get people signed up for like 6 weeks training because people will forget things. So
Yeah,
you need to implement something that keeps like rolling over, don't you? So you keep learning, and keep
yeah,
building that experience. Of course, you touched on
definitely.
like training initiatives. So, is there any others that you've seen that have worked effectively, or any other sort of initiatives that you've heard other companies roll out?
Yeah, I think you touched upon it in the comment that you just made, having training that like also is coupled with real world applications. For example, you learn something and then you should be able to apply it, right? And something
Yeah.
that you're working on today or maybe in a different area. So two things that I think would be really interesting and I think could really help. One could be like having a job shadowing program initiative where, for example, you could shadow somebody that works in a different area that maybe might be working more on a tech side. So you would learn a new skill sets there. And then potentially you could take what you've learned there into your own area that you're working in. Another thing that I really is when companies have something called like an innovation hub. So, for example, where you could, for example, maybe once a week or month, you could go there and you can work on other projects or you can learn a new skill
Mhm.
sets. But you have the opportunity to do that during work, for example. Other thing that like I think would be great to have is an interactive learning initiatives that basically is more tailored to gives you those more personal training experiences that you might need as I mentioned before, maybe training that is more targeted to your persona, what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. So what you learned then you can then actually apply in your day-to-day job, right? Also having recognition programs. So for example, like if people are very competitive, you can, for example, celebrating who has done the most, not saying the most training courses, but like keeping track on milestones and skills development to motivate ongoing learning. Definitely very important to have leadership support. So ensuring that management actively promotes and participates in learning initiatives as well. Setting I would say like a role model within the organization is also very important.
Yeah. So you could do whoever does the most training courses gets a day off. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, depending on the
I think,
rewards, but it's definitely would
yeah,
help,
no.
right?
I think competitions, things like people do as humans. I think we are competitive as nature, and it's obviously it
Yeah.
builds momentum, it creates a culture as well, doesn't it? I think you get that competitive streak within you, like within your team. I think it definitely helps. So
Yeah.
obviously AI and MLs, obviously there's a lot changing, it's rapidly moving, and obviously people you've got constantly in your roles, you've got to constantly be learning, haven't you? So it can
Mm.
get overwhelming, can't it? How can you, as a leader, help individuals in your team to manage their stress or get preventive burnout and things like that?
You mean like from adapting to like new technologies?
Yeah, because obviously there's a lot of changes happening, isn't there?
Yeah.
And it's how can you
Yeah.
help? Because there will people will be some naturally that can move quickly, others that take time to adjust and things like that. So how can you
Yeah.
what strategies could we put in place for people to manage this?
Sure. I would say change should happen incrementally, not forcing everything like or dump everything at once.
Mhm.
So having that incremental approach, but also having guidance, having support there, being able to give them the time to learn a new skill set, having regular feedback sessions as well. So for example, what I've noticed is when people have questions, like when they come, that they have somebody that they can come to and talk to about. So I try to be the person within our organization, so I think that's really important. Like also having feedback loops, having regular check-in with employees to understand what are some of the challenges that you're facing, address their concerns, which is super, super important.
Mhm.
And then also potentially also offering flexible work options. So for example, as I've mentioned, maybe having dedicated time away from your day-to-day job to learn these new skill sets so that you can really focus on that and spending really your time and energy and your learning ability to do that. It's definitely super important.
Yeah, because I think yeah, you do need. I think obviously making sure people don't learning. Well, obviously, there will be people that want to learn their own time, but obviously, within work learning, like, I think you need to give people make sure they're doing it in their work hours because if people start eating into their like social lives, I think it does. Feel like you're just constantly churning work in and out. But you need to have that right work life balance for people because people will get bogged down with that.
Yeah, yeah. Although saying that, what I was super impressed with when during COVID, for example, when COVID first hit, was that from literally from one week to another week, we all were remote and we all basically had to learn how to use new tools, be it like Zoom, be it Teams, be it collaboration tools. And for a lot of people, I was very impressed with how quickly people adopted to that and learned those tools. So I guess not saying that an event like that is, how do you say that, should come again to reinforce learning, but I would say people are capable more than maybe we give them credit, maybe sometimes do.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, definitely. There's more to people's strengths. I think there's more you can do with yourself. Like, I think the human brain is under misunderstood sort of thing. It's not enough learned about it yet. And I think there's a lot more that can be achieved with it. So, obviously, what advice would you give to anyone that's new to or that really started their AI journey? What would be your advice?
Yeah, so I would say definitely start first with clear objectives. So define your goals that you wanna, why you wanna use generative AI, what kind of use cases, like, and also really be mindful of is there any other technology that you could use instead? So like everybody thinks now generative AI will solve everything and can be thrown in at everything. I think it's good for certain things, maybe not so good for other things. So really be clear about what are you trying to solve, what problems. Definitely also invest in talent, focusing on hiring, developing talent with generative AI expertise, fostering a learning culture. So, really encouraging continuous learning and adaptability. So, the willingness to change is definitely really important. Ensure that you also have ethical practices in place. So, as I've mentioned, having guidelines, having standards, having policies. How do we govern it? What are the ethics around using generative AI? Emphasizing on fairness, transparency, so like having a good framework in place that will determine on how you're planning on using it. And then lastly, I would say monitor and iterate. So regular assess like your implementations and be prepared to make adjustments based on feedbacks and outcomes.
Brilliant. Cool. Some great tips and interesting strategies discussed. And yeah, that's all the questions. So I really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thank you so much. No, I enjoyed talking to you.
Brilliant. Hope everyone's enjoyed the discussion today and find the insights useful. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.